especially we'll look at HIV and national borders, and you'll hear several very fascinating presentations about national borders, and sometimes the laws that are put in place which are meant to perhaps protect the public health, but actually do the exact opposite. So we have very interesting presentations for you, and we hope to have time for discussion. So we're going to begin right away into our presentation, and I'll ask my key co-chair to begin and introduce our first witness.
The next presenter is Professor One of University School of Law. Professor Wanda specializes in the area of international human rights law.
Thank you. I'd like to start off by giving you some basic information on AIDS law in Korea, briefly review some HIV restrictions that many of you are familiar with, and then speak to you about the newest restrictions for foreigners on the E2 foreign language teachers visa. This new foreign language teachers visa and the HIV restrictions are very different from previous restrictions that involve in-country testing and in many cases repeat in-country testing. This puts Korea in a very small group of about 6 countries that require mandatory HIV testing that must be repeated on a regular basis. HIV is classified as a contagious epidemic disease by law in Korea under the Contagious Disease Prevention Act. Under the Immigration Control Act, the government may prohibit the entry of foreigners with HIV/AIDS at its discretion. Moreover, the government may deport any foreigners found to have AIDS in Korea regardless of how they were infected. That's key, regardless of how they were infected. So a total ban on non-citizens living with AIDS, HIV in Korea, but it's discretionary. It's discretionary, yes, but the government has been aggressive in enforcing this deportation policy as evidenced by the Hall case, HEO, listed there at the bottom of the screen, just last year. And it was the Immigration Control Act, Articles 46 and 11 that were cited. So despite what you hear, HIV deportation policy is alive and well in Korea. Mr. Ho has successfully challenged the government's deportation order twice now, but the government has planned another appeal, this time to the Supreme Court of Korea. Now, foreign visitors are generally not required to declare HIV status upon arrival. So your average tourist coming in by Korea, you're not going to be asked whether or not you have a contagious disease or HIV. However, certain foreigners are not only required to declare status, but also must submit to HIV tests. Under the AIDS Prevention Act, what are called long-term sojourners are required to be tested. But as you can see, the language is a little vague here, and who exactly these long-term sojourners are is not defined in this article. They are defined elsewhere in the Act, however. Now, while the test subject language here is vague, what's very clear is that the HIV test for foreigners are set up as entry requirements. This is directly in line with the entry requirements contemplated in the Immigration Control Act that we just looked at. In other words, HIV tests for foreigners are designed to keep foreigners living with HIV/AIDS out of Korea. Note that the HIV tests are done in the sending country, that's the home country of the visa applicant. HIV-negative test results from testing centers outside of Korea are first submitted through the Korea Immigration Service as part of a visa application procedure through Korean overseas embassies, consulates generally. And here's the law that describes that process. Okay, so here are the long-term sojourners who are defined as the examination subjects and are required to submit HIV-negative test results from their home country. Now, and this is key, there's a bit of a knowledge gap here because one group of non-citizens required to get these tests are not defined here. These are foreign industrial laborers who come to Korea under various government-sponsored work programs. In fact, they aren't mentioned in any law, but it's common knowledge they're required to submit to HIV tests in order to gain entry. What's more, once arriving in Korea, they often have to submit to additional HIV testing. There's really no discussion of this, but we know it's true because of cases like the Hall case that I just mentioned. Hall was tested in country through a government work program, and we know this because of official court records of his case. Okay, so a lot more research needs to be done in this area to find out just how much testing is going on and how much deportation. Also a lot more advocacy. This is necessary because these deportation orders are rarely challenged, and they can be challenged, specifically if it's done in-country. In-country testing is highly significant because it gives us the chance to challenge it under Korean law, as we will see in the case of the E2 visa. Okay. As for the defined group that are required to do HIV tests in their home countries, here they are here. People at all familiar with Korea's HIV restrictions are familiar with the foreigners targeted here in this legislation. There are 3 subcategories. They all come under one visa type. This is the E6 visa, the so-called entertainer's visa. You can see there are 3 subcategories here, but the vast majority of E6 visa holders fall into this last category, defined here as entertainment-related businesses or activities in order to make a profit. All right, so this is a not-so-subtly disguised foreign sex worker category. The vast majority of E6 visa holders are involved in sex work. The professional athletes and creative artists working in film and TV, also under the E6, only are about less than 1%. 2008 statistics put the E6 visa holder number in Korea just under 5,000. 75% are women, 60% of the women are from the Philippines. Filipino sex workers have been brought into the country since the 1990s, primarily to cater to U.S. military forces stationed in Korea. There's been a good amount of research and writing on these women. More recently, women have been brought in from Russia and the former Soviet republics on E6 visas to cater to Korean men as sex workers. HIV tests for E6 visa holders exist because of concern over transmission through sex work. It should be noted that Korean sex workers are also required to receive regular HIV tests, in fact under the very same AIDS Prevention Act. We don't have a very good explanation for why the foreign creative artists and professional athletes are required to have HIV tests, and neither do we have a very good explanation for why a new category of foreigners are now required to submit to HIV tests under the E2 visa. Not the E6, it's the E2 Foreign Language Teachers Visa. As I've mentioned, there's been a good deal of research and discussion about the E6 Entertainers Visa. It's mentioned, for example, in this May 2009 UN publication on worldwide HIV travel restrictions. No mention of the E2 visa. In fact, there's been almost no discussion of it, and it involves 4 times the number of test subjects than the E6 does. The E2 visa holders, statistics here.